Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Murder Tapes podcast, season 2, episode 10. Wilson and I got to go to Houston this past weekend and spent time with family, which was really nice because we haven't seen any of our family since my graduation party in May. We also went to go see Neil deGrasse Tyson, which was really, really fun. Wilson got tickets for me and his mom and him to go, and it was just really fun. Got to learn a lot, and it was a good amount of time. I think it was like 2 hours and 30 minutes-ish, but either way, I hope you all had a great weekend, and today we're going to be talking about the Washington Navy Yard shooting. I learned about this case after researching different shootings, and it was odd to me that it isn't really talked about, and I haven't seen any other podcasts cover it. Aaron Alexis was born on May 9th, 1979 in Queens, New York. He grew up in Brooklyn and was a resident of Fort Worth, Texas. He had an interest in Buddhism and Thai culture, and at one point, he worked as a waiter at a Thai restaurant and studied the language. He also meditated at Buddhist temples. He joined the U.S. Navy in 2007 and served in Fleet Logistics Support, Squadron 46 at Naval Air Station, Joint Reserve Base, Fort Worth. His rating was Aviation Electrician's Mate. His specialty was fixing electrical systems on airplanes. Navy Secretary Ray Mabus told CNN that Aaron was in the Ready Reserve, which meant he didn't have a day-to-day contract with the Navy, but if he was called upon, quote, he would be one of the ones mobilized. He also attained the rank of Petty Officer 3rd Class when he was honorably discharged on January 31st of 2011. Although he was honorably discharged, he had multiple run-ins with the law and was originally supposed to receive a general discharge. During his military service, he displayed a pattern of misbehavior, according to Navy officials, who declined to provide further details. After leaving the service, he became a Navy contractor. At the time of the shooting, Aaron worked for a company associated with Hewlett-Packard that serviced the Navy's internet system, as stated in a Hewlett-Packard statement. He had been residing for several weeks at an extended stay hotel with colleagues assigned to the Navy Yard project, according to a government official. In 2010, Aaron was arrested in Fort Worth for discharging a firearm. At the time, he was living in an apartment complex called Orion at Oak Hill. His upstairs neighbor called the police after hearing a pop. Observing dust and holes in her floor and ceiling, she reported feeling threatened by Aaron after he confronted her in the parking lot about noise, according to the Fort Worth police report. Aaron later told an officer that the gun had accidentally discharged while he was cleaning it and cooking. When questioned why he didn't call the police or check on the resident above him, he replied that he didn't believe the bullet had gone through because he couldn't see light through the hole, as documented in the report. The officer noted that the gun was disassembled and coated in oil. James Rotter, the father of the woman in the apartment, stated that the shot came close to where his daughter had been seated. She moved out following the incident, and legal counsel advised the family against pressing charges. How could you prove he did it on purpose when he claimed he was cleaning his gun? Mr. Rotter questioned. In recent years, Aaron had a relationship with a Thai woman and began frequenting a Buddhist temple in White Settlement, Texas, a suburb of Fort Worth. According to Pat Pundisto, a temple member, he developed Thai friendships, enjoyed Thai cuisine, and felt a strong connection to Thai culture. He regularly attended Sunday services, participated in Buddhist chants, and stayed to meditate afterward. During celebrations such as Thai New Year in April, he volunteered and dressed in ceremonial Thai attire provided by the temple to assist in serving guests. At the temple, he met the owner of the Happy Bowl Thai restaurant in White Settlement in 2011. Aaron helped out at the restaurant in exchange for food and lodging. There, he spent his time playing computer games all day and night using one of 3 computers he kept in his room, which contributed to increased household electricity bills. After securing a job repairing computers, the family requested that he contribute to utility expenses. According to the owner, he seldom paid and frequently borrowed money. He also complained about his employer withholding his wages. He had a concealed carry permit in Texas, but was arrested in 2010 while in Fort Worth because he discharged a weapon within city limits. At another time, he used a .45 caliber pistol to shoot out the tires of a construction worker's car in what he called an anger-fueled blackout after leaving his grandma's home. He fired 3 rounds, 2 at the rear tires and the other into the air. A construction manager reported to police that he believed Aaron was upset about the parking situation outside the worksite. However, Aaron told police he experienced an anger-fueled blackout and could not recall firing the weapon until about an hour afterward. According to the detective's report, he mentioned being in New York during the September 11 attacks and described to a detective how those events disturbed him. Aaron's father informed investigators that his son had issues related to post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD, and had been an active participant in rescue efforts during September 11th. Aaron's father could not be reached for further comment. Aaron wasn't charged for any of the offenses. There was also an occasion when he spent 2 nights in jail after being cited for disorderly conduct following a disturbance at a nightclub. The arresting officer also stated he swore and used lots of profanity during their interaction. Another one of his friends in Fort Worth has memories of Aaron sitting at a table at the restaurant Happy Bowl and trying to teach himself Thai. Aaron worked in Japan refreshing computer systems on the Navy Marine Corps Intranet network for HP Enterprise Services subcontracting company called The Experts from September 2012 to January 2013. When he returned from Japan, he expressed frustration when speaking to a former roommate because he hadn't been paid for the work he did. Another one of his former roommates said he complained often about being discriminated against, and he resumed working for the Experts in the U.S. soon after. A police report showed that he was struggling with mental illness and complained of hearing voices. According to a police report, Aaron called Newport Police on August 7, 2013 from his hotel room, saying that 3 men had been sent to harass him. The report stated, quote, Aaron believes that the individual that he got into an argument with has sent 3 people to follow him and keep him awake by talking to him and sending vibrations into his body. According to him, they were sent by an unknown party that Aaron had gotten into an altercation with on his flight from Virginia to Rhode Island. The report also stated Aaron moved from one hotel to a Navy base and then to another hotel because the voices were following him. Aaron told police that the men following him were using, quote, some sort of microwave machine to send vibrations through the ceiling, penetrating his body so he cannot fall asleep. Police asked Aaron about his mental health, and he mentioned he never had a history of mental illness, and he's never felt this way before. He was also able to get the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal and the National Defense Service Medal. His friends would say, quote, he was regularly medicated at a local Buddhist temple and was unfailingly courteous and never showed signs of the violence that is now his legacy. When he lived at my house, I never saw him get angry about anything. My feeling is, if he was angry about anything, he didn't show that to me. Aaron arrived in Washington, D.C. around August 25, 2013. He was staying at the Residence Inn Hotel in Southwest Washington since September 7th. He was working for a subcontractor on a Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Services contract and staying with 5 other civilian contractors. 2 days before the crime, Aaron visited the Sharpshooter's Small Arms Range in Lorton, Virginia. He tested an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle but didn't seek to buy it, according to the store lawyer. After he purchased ammunition and test-fired an AR-15, he inquired about buying a handgun. However, federal law doesn't allow dealers to sell directly to out-of-state residents, and if he did buy one, it would have been shipped to his home state. Aaron then bought a Remington 870 Express 12-gauge shotgun and 2 boxes of shells that contains 24 rounds after passing both a state and federal background check. He decided on this purchase because rifles and shotguns can be sold to out-of-state residents. A little bit before 8:20 a.m. on September 16, 2013, Aaron Alexis arrived at the Navy Yard in a rental car, gaining access using a valid pass. He carried a disassembled shotgun with its barrel and stock sawed off in a bag on his shoulder. Inside a bathroom on the 4th floor of Building 197, Aaron assembled the shotgun. Emerging from the bathroom, he began firing, targeting victims at close range on the 4th floor, many fatally shot in the head. Civilian employees described a chaotic scene as gunfire erupted through the hallways of the Naval Sea Systems Command headquarters, situated on the banks of the Anacostia River a few miles from the White House and approximately a half-mile from the Capitol. Quote, I heard 3 gunshots, pow 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 straight in a row, recounted Patricia Ward, a logistics management specialist from Woodbridge, Virginia, who was in the cafeteria on the 1st floor when the shooting began. Quote, about 3 seconds later, there were 4 more gunshots, and all of the people in the cafeteria were panicking, trying to figure out which way we were going to run out. Aaron proceeded to fire on the 3rd floor and in the lobby. He overlooked the atrium and shot at employees eating breakfast below. A police officer would say, quote, "He was shooting down from above the people. That is where he does most of his damage." During the rampage, he killed a security officer and seized the officer's Beretta 9mm semi-automatic pistol after exhausting shotgun ammunition. Initial reports suggesting Aaron targeted victims from a fourth-floor walkway onto those entering a first-floor cafeteria were later corrected. At 8:23 a.m., the first 911 calls were placed. Within 6 minutes, a 4-person active shooter response team entered the building. Aaron continued shooting on the 3rd and 4th floors during this time. A Naval Sea employee recounted encountering Aaron in all-blue attire on the 3rd floor hallway where he began firing indiscriminately. In the chaos, a bystander was struck by a stray bullet in an alleyway. Initially, the Washington Chief of Police, Kathy L. Lanier, said they were searching for a white male wearing khakis and a beret. A man matching his description had been seen with a handgun. He was soon identified and deemed to not be a suspect. They were also searching for a black male wearing olive military pants and carrying a long gun. The black male, however, was not identified. At around 7 p.m. that night, officials ruled out the possibility of any other shooters, but authorities still believe it's possible there may be one more accomplice. Bertilla Laverne gave a very detailed account on the attack from inside the compound where unfortunately one of her friends was shot in the head. She recalls the first bang sounding distant and muffled. She was on the 4th floor and assumed someone was downstairs setting up for an event and dropped a folding table. However, she soon realized that bangs kept going and she recognized the sounds. She recognized them because just a couple years earlier, she was a Navy medical specialist. She was known as a corpsman, and she had been on the training operations with the Marines. She hit the floor and hid under a desk with her supervisor in the nearest cubicle. While the shots kept going off, they stayed there silently. The building had an open floor plan, and she was able to see the 5th floor when she saw someone moving. She screamed, "Get down," and jumped out of the cubicle. She recalls her supervisor named Andy Kelly telling her the same thing and then seeing a bright flash of light. Quote, "Glass shattered right by my head. It was on the edge of Andy's cubicle." Her detailed account is the most detailed yet. Bertilla said that her and Andy ducked down and waited for a break in the shooting. Quote, "We realized then we had to get out of the building. Andy looked around the corner to check that the coast was clear." Bertilla then crawled to her desk and got her ID and purse when she saw her colleague, Vishnu Pandit. She said he was down. Vishnu was 61 years old and spent 30 years in the Navy. He was known to his coworkers as Kisan. He had 2 sons and was a grandfather that lived in North Potomac, Maryland. He was the first person she talked to every morning when she arrived in the office. He had been shot in his left temple. Bertilla used tissues from his desk in order to apply pressure to his head wounds. She held him and prayed. Quote, "I felt him breathe." She also felt for his pulse and was surprised that it was strong. She turned to Andy and said, quote, "We need help now." And Andy ran for help and Bertilla stayed behind. She wasn't sure where the gunman was. She told him, quote, "Stay with me, I'm right here and we don't want you to go." She also told him that God and his friends loved him and wanted him to stay with them. 3 security guards got there and carried Vishnu to an office chair and rolled him to the stairs and strapped him into an evacuation chair. These were used to help disabled people escape quickly, but it would not roll. She said they lifted and dragged the chair down the stairs, and at every floor she checked his pulse. His pulse was strong. When they got to the 2nd floor, she heard the security guard radios go off. She would tell them the shooter was on the 1st floor on the west side, which is the direction they were headed. They went down the stairs and managed to escape through a side door. They found a security guard in an unmarked car. The security guard was worried about leaving their post because the gunman was loose, but they ended up taking Bertilla and Vishnu. The security guard raced off and made it safely off the grounds of the Navy Yard. He dropped them at a street corner a few blocks away and called an ambulance so that he could get back to his post. Bertilla placed Vishnu down and realized his pulse was gone. Just across the street, a man named James Birdsall was enjoying his morning coffee in his office, located on the 11th floor at an engineering company called Parsons. As James and his colleagues watched, police cars raced towards the Navy Yard. Birdsall noticed a man lying on the street corner at New Jersey Avenue and M Street. Initially, thinking it might be a medical emergency like a heart attack, Birdsall hesitated briefly. Despite being trained to use a defibrillator, he saw another woman already performing CPR across the street. Reflecting on the moment, Birdsall recalled thinking, "If I don't act now, I'll regret it." Without further hesitation, he grabbed the defibrillator and rushed to help. The ride down the 11 floors felt unusually long, and the sprint through the lobby and across the intersection was a blur of urgency. Reaching Vishnu, Birdsall knelt beside him while Laverne continued chest compressions. This scene, captured in a photo by congressional staffer Don Andres and shared on Twitter by Tim Hogan, initially sparked speculation about the circumstances. Questions arose about whether it was a shooting victim and how he ended up blocks away from the Navy Yard. Despite doubts, Birdsall confirmed seeing the gunshot wound to Vishnu's head. He quickly applied the defibrillator pads, which advised against administering a shock. Bertilla persisted with CPR while others joined in to assist. Throughout the effort, Bertilla kept speaking to Vishnu, revealing their close relationship through her heartfelt calls of his name. In less than 2 minutes, an ambulance arrived. Bertilla wanted to accompany Vishnu to the hospital, but a detective redirected her to provide a police report instead. She ensured Vishnu's identity was clear by handing over his badge to the rescue team. The Associated Press initially published photos taken by Andres, but later withdrew them until their relevance to the Navy Yard shootings could be confirmed. The photos were subsequently reissued alongside verified details of the incident. Tragically, Vishnu was pronounced dead upon arrival at George Washington University Hospital. Dr. Babak Sarani, the hospital's director of trauma and acute care surgery, described his injuries as not survivable. Bertilla, a mother from Stafford, Virginia, attended Vishnu's funeral, remembering him as a dear friend. Her husband, Navy Lieutenant Commander Randall Laverne, expressed pride in her quick response, stating, "That's my wife, always ready to help." DC police arrived within 7 minutes of the initial shootings, prompting Aaron to open fire on them, injuring Officer Scott Williams in the leg. Engaging in a prolonged gunfight with multiple law enforcement personnel, Aaron resisted for over 30 minutes. Around 9:20 a.m., police fatally shot Aaron in the head on the 3rd floor. His death was officially confirmed at 11:50 a.m. At the time of his death, he was pursuing a bachelor's degree in aeronautics from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. As I mentioned earlier, he suffered from mental issues, including paranoia, a sleep disorder, and hearing voices. He would often try Buddhist meditation in order to control his emotions. Since August of 2013, he had been treated by the Veterans Administration for these mental problems, and he was prescribed trazodone. Trazodone is a generic antidepressant that is known to treat insomnia. Roadways and bridges were temporarily closed at the time of the shooting, and flights out of Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport were temporarily suspended. 8 schools were also locked down, and a little bit after 3 p.m., United States Senate buildings were locked down for an hour for safety reasons. The Washington Nationals baseball team also postponed their scheduled game since it wasn't far from the area. The city was rattled once again on the following Monday evening when firecrackers were thrown over the fence at the White House. The loud bangs triggered a rapid and forceful reaction from Secret Service agents, who apprehended a man in white shorts and a t-shirt on Pennsylvania Avenue. The Navy Yard reopened and resumed their usual operations on Thursday, September 19th, just 3 days after the tragedy. They're currently working on renovating the 650,000 square foot structure in Southwest Washington. There was a $6.4 million repair and restoration contract that was awarded in order to hopefully wipe away the trauma from the building. Quote, "The repairs shall be done in a manner that changes the feel, finish, appearance, and layout of the space, creating a different sense of place and mitigating the psychological and emotional impacts that the facility itself could have on returning occupants." The contractor also developed multiple different design concepts, including extensive changes to the building's entrances and exterior finishes. Quote, "Fundamentally, the decision about Building 197 is not about the building, but about whether people are ready to move from trauma and despair to healing and hope," said Richard Harwood, a Bethesda consultant and community problem solving. Thursday will be a standard workday, except for Building 197. The site of the tragic shootings and the base gym, which will serve as the FBI staging area to investigate Monday's massacre, said Navy spokeswoman Lieutenant Commander Sarah Flaherty, according to the Associated Press. Authorities are still searching for a motive behind Aaron Alexis' attack at the headquarters of the Naval Sea Systems Command. Revelations about Aaron's troubled history, including military disciplinary issues and reports of depression and paranoia, have emerged since the incident. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel remarked on Wednesday that obviously there were a lot of red flags in Aaron's past. This includes incidents such as complaints of insomnia and visits to VA, also known as Veterans Health Administration hospitals, prompting the Department of Defense to examine why these issues were not addressed sooner. Aaron sought treatment for insomnia at the VA Medical Center in Providence, Rhode Island on August 23rd, where he received sleep medication and was advised to follow up with a doctor. 5 days later, he visited the VA hospital in Washington, D.C., again citing sleep difficulties related to his work schedule and receiving medication refills. During these visits, Aaron appeared alert and oriented, and denied feeling depressed, anxious, or prone to violence, as stated in a VA statement provided to lawmakers on Wednesday. Just 2 weeks before his ER visit, Aaron had reported to Rhode Island police that he was being communicated with through the walls and ceilings of his hotel room, and that microwave vibrations were being used to prevent him from sleeping. Newport authorities informed the base security office, but no action was taken because Aaron did not appear to pose a threat at the time. According to naval officials, Barack Obama was the president at the time, and he attended a memorial service for the Navy Yard victims. That following Wednesday, Kathleen Alexis, the mother of Aaron Alexis, expressed her deep sorrow for the victims' families, stating, "I am so very sorry that this happened. My heart is broken." She also acknowledged her son's actions, saying, "His actions have had a profound and everlasting effect on the families of the victims." Speaking briefly to a reporter in New York, she added, "I don't know why he did what he did, and I'll never be able to ask him why. Aaron is now in a place where he can no longer do harm to anyone, and for that I am glad." The woman that owned Happy Bull Ty and let him stay with her expressed shock over his involvement in the Navy Yard massacre. The sister of one of his former roommates described him as crazy in a positive way. "He looked kind of bonkers. Crazy in a positive way. Like funny," she said in Thai. "So I really can't believe this." She recounted how Aaron enjoyed Thailand and expressed fondness for Thai women, noting their outings together in Bangkok and visits to massage parlors in the evening. Quote, "He was in a good mood every day laughing. One time at the market, he understood Thai and heard a woman saying rude words about him. Instead of getting angry, he laughed and told her, 'I understand what you said.'" President Barack Obama vowed to hold the perpetrators accountable following the shootings at the Washington Navy Yard. On the day of the tragedy, he ordered flags to be flown at half-staff until sunset on September 20th at the White House, all public buildings, and military installations. Department of Defense officials honored the victims by laying a wreath at the Navy Memorial Plaza on September 17th. President Obama personally attended a memorial service for the victims on September 22nd. During the service, President Obama reiterated his call for reforms to U.S. gun laws, stressing that tears alone were insufficient. He urged Americans to reject complacency towards mass shootings, emphasizing that it was unacceptable for innocent individuals to be gunned down where they work. The shooting carried out by contractor Aaron Alexis resulted in the deaths of 12 people before Aaron was fatally shot by police. Reports indicated that Aaron had untreated mental health issues. Acknowledging the challenges of achieving legislative change in Washington, President Obama emphasized that progress would only come through the collective determination of the American people. He highlighted that this was the 5th time during his presidency that he had addressed a memorial event for victims of mass shootings. Following the Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre in December the previous year, the president had unsuccessfully sought expanded background checks for firearm buyers and the reinstatement of a lapsed ban on military-style assault weapons, which failed to secure the necessary votes in the Senate. United Nations data underscored that the U.S. has a significantly higher rate of firearm-related homicides compared to other developed countries. Ahead of the memorial, President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama privately met with relatives of the victims to offer condolences and support. In response to the shooting, Thomas Hoshko, CEO of the company where Aaron worked, expressed deep sadness in a message to Navy Secretary Ray Mabus. The incident prompted discussions on the adequacy of security measures at U.S. military facilities, leading Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel to order a comprehensive review of security protocols worldwide. Concerns were raised about the security standards at the Navy Yard, where Aaron had access due to a secret-level security clearance and a Common Access Card, also known as CAC. Despite regulations prohibiting personal firearms on military bases, armed personnel were present during the shooting. On September 17th, gun control advocates and families of victims of previous shootings in Sandy Hook, Aurora, and Oak Creek rallied in Washington to demand stricter gun control laws. They hoped that the proximity of the Navy Yard to Capitol Hill would spur lawmakers into action to enforce stricter background checks and close loopholes allowing gun purchases without adequate screening, particularly at gun shows. Aaron was granted a secret-level security clearance despite discrepancies uncovered in his background. An internal inquiry revealed that when Aaron enlisted in June 2007, he falsely declared on a security questionnaire that he had never been arrested. However, a fingerprint check later revealed an arrest 3 years earlier in Seattle. Despite Aaron attending an interview and offering a partial explanation for not disclosing the arrest, he was still granted security clearance. This incident was part of a quick turnaround Navy inquiry conducted after Aaron's deadly rampage at the Washington Navy Yard a week prior. A Navy official, speaking anonymously due to the sensitivity of the information, provided a detailed overview of Aaron's military tenure from 2007 to 2011. Defense officials acknowledged oversights in Aaron's background checks that allowed him to obtain and retain his security clearance while working as a Navy contractor, despite prior police and behavioral issues. This has raised scrutiny on both the Navy's clearance granting process and the Office of Personnel Management, also known as OPM, responsible for conducting background checks on government personnel. It was disclosed that OPM outsourced at least one of Aaron's background checks to USCIS, also known as the Military Helpline, based in Virginia. The assessment for Aaron's security clearance overlooked critical details of the Seattle incident in 2004, where he used a firearm to shoot out a construction worker's car tires during an anger-fueled altercation. Although Aaron disclosed some details during his interview with OPM, crucial aspects of the police report were omitted. The Navy granted him secret-level clearance months later, referencing only his poor credit history as a caveat. While Aaron's position in Fleet Logistics Support Squadron 46 did not necessitate secret-level clearance, recruits often undergo the process in anticipation of future needs. Military clearances like Aaron's are primarily intended to gauge susceptibility to coercion or bribery by hostile forces. The clearance remained valid when Aaron transitioned to an IT contractor role at Navy installations in 2012, a year after leaving the reserves. The Navy official briefing reporters could not definitively state if Aaron would have been denied clearance had his false declaration been known. The inquiry highlighted discrepancies between the Seattle police report and the version provided by Aaron to the Office of Personnel Management. Recommendations from the inquiry include incorporating police documents into future OPM background checks, rather than relying solely on applicant accounts. It is so sad to think about the fact that so many people didn't go home to their loved ones. I'm now going to list out the victims that had their lives tragically taken away on this day, as well as their age. Michael Arnold was 59 years old. Martin Bodrog was 53 years old. Arthur Daniels was 51 years old. Sylvia Frazier was 53 years old. Kathy Gard was 62 years old. John Roger Johnson was 73 years old. Mary Frances Knight was 51 years old. Frank Kohler was 50 years old. Vishnu Pandit was 61 years old. Kenneth Bernard Proctor was 46 years old. Gerald Reed was 58 years old. And Richard Michael Ridgell was 52 years old. Going through the evidence in this case was a very emotional thing for me. When you work with people, you never think about possibly being in a situation like this one. And the fact that everyone was looking out for each other made me so happy. But of course, the situation is so tragic. I've added lots of photos and videos on our Instagram at Murder Tapes Podcast. I've also linked all of the evidence in the show notes. Feel free to also follow my personal Instagram if you would like at Annalisa. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you on the next one.